In this video, we're going to go through 2 example problems of factoring to help you out on your practice. So the first one says factor the given polynomial. So we know that that means that I want to find my GCF and then follow the steps to be able to find the 2 numbers that multiply to C and add to B. So step 1 is to find my GCF. And so I have a -1 for coefficient here, and then 13, and then -40. So the only thing they can have in common is that -1. So I'm going to pull out a -1, and you have to pull out the negative. If the leading coefficient is negative, you have to pull out a GCF of a negative, even if you're only pulling out a 1. And then I want to look at the K's. So I have 2 K's here, 1 here, and none here. So I can't pull out any K's. So I'm going to start my parentheses, and I'm going to divide each term by -1. All that's going to do is that's going to change to the opposite sign for all of these. So this is going to turn in, so a -1 divided by -1 is a +1. So that's K squared. Positive 13 divided by -1 is -13. And then I bring the K with it. And -40 divided by -1 is +40. Now, once I have my polynomial in here, I want to label my A, B, and C. So I have A out front, B is -13, C is 40. And I'm going to use those to put into a t-chart, and I want to find the things that multiply to C, which is +40, and add to B, which is -13. And so if I'm multiplying to a positive number, I know that both numbers either have to be positive or they have to be negative. So when I'm making my list, I have to include both. So 40 divided by 1 is 40. So I have 1 and 40, but then also -1 and -40. 40 divided by 2 is 20. So I have +2 and +20, and then -2 and -20. 40 divided by 3 gives me a decimal, so I'm going to move on to 40 divided by 4. So I have 4 and 10, and -4 and -10. Then 40 divided by 5 is 8, so I have +5, +8, and -5, -8. And then 40 can't be divided by 6 or 7, and then I'm back at 8. So now I want to go through and I want to find what all of these numbers add up to. And I can kind of eliminate some options. So if I'm adding to -13, none of the positive versions are going to help me. So like this can't be it. So I'm going to cross off all my positive versions. Then I'm going to go through and I'm going to add all the negative ones. So -1 plus -40 is -41. Well, that's not what I want. -2 plus -20 is -22. -4 plus -10 is -14, which is really close, but not quite. But then -5 and -8 is -13, which is exactly what I want. So now all I need to do is I need to take these 2 factors, the -5 and -8, and write it in factored form. So I have my GCF up front, the -1. And then I have inside parentheses K, remember use the variable they're using, -5, because it's negative, and K -8, because it was negative. And I'm done. If you're feeling ready, you can go do the practice, but if you want to see another example, I'm going to do this next one. So it says find the factored form of the trinomial, and I'm going to start the same way. I need to factor out the GCF. So my GCF, I want to try making the trees for 4, because that's my smallest number. And so I have 1 and 4, and 2 and 2. Well, I know that 4 can be divided by 4. And I know that this other 4 can be divided by 4. But now I need to check if 224 can be divided by 4. And it can. So this is part of my GCF. So I'm going to pull out a 4. And then I'm going to check the n. So I have n squared here, n here, and no n's here. So I can't pull out an n, so I'm just going to start my parentheses and divide everything by 4. 4 divided by 4 is just 1, so I'm left with n squared, or 1n squared. Negative 4 divided by 4 is negative 1, or negative n squared, or negative n, sorry. And then negative 224 divided by 4 is negative 56. So now I'm going to use these numbers. So I'm going to label my A, B, and C so I can use them in my table. So A is in front of the n squared term, if my mouse will cooperate. So A is just 1. And then B is in front of my n term, so this is B. And C is at the end. So I'm going to make my T-chart. And I want to find things that multiply to C, which is negative 56, and add to B, which is negative 1. And so I need to find all the factors of negative 56. And remember, if it's a negative number, that means one of the numbers has to be positive and one has to be negative. So I'm going to start with 56 divided by 1. So I have 1 and negative 56. And then also negative 1 and positive 56. 56 divided by 2 gives me 28. So I have 2 and negative 28. And negative 2 and positive 28. 56 divided by 3 gives me a decimal. 56 divided by 4 is 14, so I have 4 and negative 14, and negative 4 and positive 14. 56 divided by 5 gives me a decimal. Divided by 6 gives me a decimal. Divided by 7 gives me 8. So I have 7 and negative 8, and negative 7 and positive 8. So I'm going to go through and start adding all of my numbers. So 1 plus negative 56, that gives me negative 55. Negative 1 plus 56 gives me 55. 2 plus negative 28 gives me negative 27. And negative 2 plus 28 gives me positive 27. 4 plus negative 14 gives me negative 10. And negative 4 plus 14 gives me positive 10. And 7 plus negative 8 gives me negative 1, which is what I was looking for. So this is the row that I care about. And now all I got to do is write that in our factored form. So the GCF stays out front, so I'm going to have a 4. And then parentheses, n plus 7, because 7 is positive, and n minus 8, because our 8 is negative. And now I'm done. So hopefully these couple problems helped you with your practice. If you need more help, make sure you ask or come to tutoring.